Okay, I was asked to make this comparison by someone, and I apologize for not having very much content out, but I've been very busy lately. But I've got a little bit of time today, so I'll just make this quick video. Anyway, he asked me to compare the different types of aircraft, which there's more types than this, I suppose, but I'm only going to go over these three, because these are the ones I'm most experienced with. Basically, we've got the flying wing configuration like this, which is kind of like a hang glider, I guess you could say. Then we've got a canard layout, which has the main elevator control surfaces in the front, and ailerons in the back. And then we've got the conventional aircraft layout, which has the elevators in the back and the ailerons and main airfoil in the front. Really, between these two, there isn't that many differences, though I find the canards are actually easier to make. Let me show you an example. Basically, this when you have the control surfaces in the back, sometimes you have a really large amount of trouble balancing that over the wings, especially if you have no lift placed on right here. Basically, this will want to fall down, like, here, I'll just unfreeze this, like, it'll want to fall down like this, so then you have to counterbalance with a weight in the front to keep it steady. Also, you tend to, if you want a lot of pitch control, you need to have your tail longer, because that makes more leverage between the tail and the front part. So basically, you need a really long tail if you want a lot of pitch control, but if you have a really long tail, then you're going to have slower maneuverability. So there's a lot of issues with having the elevators mounted behind. Like, if it's really close and a really big control surface, then I guess you could get a lot of pitch control, but then you're going to have over-rolling, and you're probably going to tumble, which you don't want either. And then there's a lot of weight issues as well. Let's check the weights on here. This is really heavy because this is a ACF aircraft. See, these main ones weigh 200, when these only weigh 30. I usually make your ailerons weigh around 110 of the main airfoil, but you'll have to test that. Then I usually have the back weigh around half of the front. It's really, these weigh more because I need pitch control, because all my planes don't have enough pitch control. But this plane probably isn't the best conventional layout, because the engine is actually in the middle. It's a pusher configuration. Sometimes you're going to have more success placing your engine on the front of the plane, pulling it, or way back here on the back when you have a conventional layout. But you'll just have to test it and see. If you have it on the front, you can sometimes get a little bit better pitch performance because you're balancing over the engine pulling on the front rather than having to fight against the engine pushing the plane up and down. But sometimes that also has negative effects on your maneuverability, so you'll have to kind of figure that out. But this has the engine basically mounted right in the center, so it has very little effect on the actual flying of the aircraft, so all this stuff is basically moving around the engine, so this thing actually has pretty good performance maneuverable wise, even though it's very heavy and large. See, let's check this. See, very fast takeoff because of a heavy wing surface. Pretty good roll control. I mean, it's not too good, but it's not a very maneuverable aircraft. And we've got pretty good pitch performance too. Yeah. Anyway, now let's look at the canard aircraft. Just let me take this in really fast. I'm actually still flying right now. There we go. Okay. Whoops. Okay. Also, remember that your weights on your fins and your efficiency affect how effective they are. So, like, if you got a really light fin on the back, it's not going to do anything. It's got to weigh enough to actually, the weight is the actual strength and the efficiency is the efficiency. So it's going to be stronger if it weighs more no matter what. But if you want it to weigh more and be as powerful as something that weighs less or something, you have to lower the efficiency or raise the efficiency depending on what you need to do. But anyway, enough of that. Let's look at the canard. Honestly, I think that the canards are a lot easier to make than these conventional layout planes. Mainly because I use lifting canards, so the front actually does not have no lift on it. It uses lift by plane normal on the front edges. And then the main edge in the back has all the weight on it. So all the weight's balanced on this airfoil on the back, and the ailerons are set up right here. So basically we've got the engine on the back pushing into this, so if this thing changes its pitch, then the plane is pushing itself up and down, rather than if you mounted the engine back here right with the elevators, then the elevators aren't doing much, the engine's overpowering the elevators. So usually if you're going to do a conventional layout, you probably want your engine on the front or in the middle, as I said before. And you can also test lift surfaces on your tail if you're doing a conventional layout, because I know that in that tutorial I made, I told you to use no lift on the back, but you can use lift on the back if that helps you balance the plane, though you may still need a counterweight. Like this plane does have a counterweight on the front right here, because there were some issues with trim. One of the easiest ways to adjust trim without needing an actual trim is where you just move this a little bit to try to adjust it from flying up and down too much. You can just change the weight on the front, and then you'll fly straight because the front weighs more. And that's the main reason why this has that. But this plane's quite small, and it's a good weight, so it's actually very maneuverable. See, I'm getting pushed through the air, so I have a very, very tight grouping on my turn, which is nice. And the two separate control surfaces give me really good control. I can pull up and I can roll. We'll see a plane that does not have that ability in just a moment. But yeah, this plane's pretty good. It's got some issues. It also doesn't have trim control at all, which is kind of a problem with planes in Garry's mod. Usually you want to make a trim variable that adds a little bit depending on where your mouse is scrolled to, because then you can basically adjust your angle of attack, which helps a lot. This plane actually has a negative angle of attack because I had a lot of trouble keeping the nose down. If you look, the wings are actually pointing down. So if you have trouble like with your plane flying up like this continuously or down like this, and you don't want to change any weights, just add a little bit to the hydraulics on your elevators to hold it down permanently. And that's basically going to change your angle of attack. Not technically, because that would be actually changing your airfoil angle, but I guess it's the same if you do it just to your elevators. Whoops. Okay. So, anyway, I definitely recommend canards if you want to go with a dual control surface layout. They don't really have any major problems. You still have a vertical stabilizer on the back, which keeps it from sliding too much, yaw-wise. You can even have another one on the front if you want to, but I don't recommend it. It's very similar to this layout, but there's less problems with the engine interfering with how you're flying. But it really all depends on the design of the aircraft. So with canards, you can't mount weapons on the wings because I guess you could, but they're really far back, so you have to mount most of your weapons if you want weapons on your plane on the actual nose itself. I also found these a pretty good balance because you can mount. This plane I actually mounted light ACF machine guns on the middle without any modifications because the weight's shared between the canards and the main airfoil, so you can mount weapons right along here firing over the front. Well, this plane you probably couldn't do that because you'd have to mount weapons right here. I mean, this one's designed to mount weapons on the front, but if you wanted to add more, you'd have to balance them, so you'd have to mount them back here, which wouldn't work. Anyway, hopefully you can understand me a little bit here. Let's go on to the flying wing. This is probably the easiest type of aircraft to make. There's some weight issues, which are sometimes difficult to figure out, but other than that, this type of aircraft is extremely maneuverable. This one isn't as good as my original one, but this is my newest one of this configuration. Extremely good roll performance, but it's also very light, so that's part of it. And then you also have very good pitch performance. But there are some problems with this kind of aircraft as well, mainly in your maneuvering department, because of a couple factors. Let's look at this thing really fast. You've got problems with sliding, which what I'm referring to with sliding is when you're going around a turn like this, a conventional aircraft or a canard has a vertical stabilizer like back here, so basically that's keeping the plane flying like this. Well, this aircraft, when you're going around a turn, might start sliding like downward like this, and it can also move side to side, which is the worst of all because it doesn't have that stabilizer, though this one does. But having a stabilizer like right here, it's just basically right in the middle of the plane, so you're still gonna get some movement around that. This is a problem with all flying wings, even in real life, is that you can't mount your vertical stabilizers farther back unless you have a tail, but then it's not really a flying wing. Also, with smaller ones, you can only fit 2 control surfaces. So these control surfaces, when you go up, are like this, and when you're turning, are like this. So you can either have one or the other. You can't go up and turn at the same time, really. I mean, if you do it, you can't really do it. Yeah, one can be like neutral and one can be up, kind of acting like a spoiler, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be going up and turning at the same time, which is kind of a problem. So when you're controlling it, you really need to be careful with that. Also, there's some problems with your trim, since there's no other thing at all, like no tail or anything to counter the way that it is. It's really important to have your counterweight, which I think I'm just using the seat as the counterweight here, to weigh enough to counteract the back of the plane. Otherwise, it will be pulling up constantly because there's no tail or front part. It's much easier to balance a canard or one of these, because this is literally, rather than changing lift and efficiency on a tail, it's all counterweight that keeps it flying straight. I guess you could change trim too, but it just there's some issues with that too. But I think the main reason for maneuverability performance is, rather than needing a long tail or something, you got no tail at all. So this is basically just it doesn't have to fight any airfoil at all. So your center of the force is like right in the center, so it can just force it through pretty much any maneuver that you want. And it's got short wings with long control surfaces, which give it better roll performance. But that's true for any aircraft. If you want good roll, you're going to want big control surfaces like these. That actually leads me to another. If you have your control surfaces mounted inward like this, you're going to get less roll over mounting them out here because of physics. Like you get less of a lever effect. This one I did that deliberately because I didn't need that much. But if you're having trouble rolling, either have longer control surfaces or put your control surfaces farther out. Anyway, I can't think of much else to say. There's a couple other types of configurations of aircraft that I didn't cover because I've never made any, like dual lift surface aircraft. I'm not talking about like a biplane, but basically I'm talking about like if you have, these exist, but I don't see much of a reason to make them in Garry's mod. I guess, well, yeah, there's probably reasons to make them in Garry's mod. I just haven't found any. Basically, you have 2 lift surfaces, like one in the front and one in the back, and then you have and then this is what lifts up your plane. You have control surfaces on those, and those are basically balanced between the 2, but there's problems with balancing that as well because you can't really have the same value. You probably could in Garry's mod, but I don't think in real life they can put the same lift efficiency and stuff on the wings because there's problems with air currents and stuff. But you could try that if you want to. Anyway, the main thing, if you're having trouble with your aircraft, you need to make sure your weights are right and your counterbalance is right. The goal is to balance the whole thing over the wing. The reason I recommend building a flying wing to start out is you don't need to worry about that as much because you've just got the counterweight and you've just got the one wing. You don't really have to balance anything at all. You just change the counterweight until it works. But these ones, you have to balance efficiency, You have to balance, you basically have to balance efficiency between all these. You also have to balance your vertical stabilizer, which is going to drag the thing down. And then you need the counterweight to balance all that when you're done with all your calculations on what the hydraulics should be set to. Same with this one. So if you're just starting out, I recommend you just try to build a flying wing just because there's a little bit less complexity in there. But if you really want to build the conventional planes, just make sure that your efficiencies are good. And if you think your efficiencies are good, like they can pass a glide test, like woo! But then see, this one actually has some issues. It keeps going up. Then change your counterweight to try to counteract. Like if it goes relatively straight, then but it's going up a little bit, you want your counterweight to weigh more. It's better to change the counterweight than to change your actual established parts of your aircraft, because you're just changing a weight. You're not like changing your hydraulics or changing your weights on the pieces that ruin the hydraulics. So counterweights, just don't forget that counterweights exist. My early planes never had counterweights, and I had a lot of problems with tweaking them. Counterweights make things a lot easier. Anyway, I really can't think of anything else to tell you. If you have any questions, just ask in the comments, and see you later.